Hey guys, Sherman here. Let's talk about rewinding game states. Now, a rewind occurs at official tournaments where there is a judge presiding and an illegal action happens on either player's board, causing the current game state to be something that is not reachable through valid game actions. When this happens, a judge is called. The judge comes over and determines whether or not the game state can be repaired in a way that is fair to both players. And if it can be repaired, then the judge will take actions to rewind or reverse and repair the current game state. Now, this is where I think a lot of the skill in judging weiss comes from, because I think weiss rulings are generally pretty simple. However, I think weiss rewindings can be pretty difficult because I think there's a lot of stuff that can be rewound properly. You just kind of have to be creative and really think what is the best way to rewind in a way that is easy to do, right? Understandable for both players, because both players need to agree to what is happening, what you're doing as a judge, and also something that is fair to both players and doesn't give either player some kind of advantage. And so today I will be demonstrating an illegal game state and 3 potential rewinds that you can do, ranked from worst to best. And this is all in my opinion, of course. And I think every judge has their own kind of approach and opinion to rewinding, and I'm not going to say that mine is necessarily the best, but this is just kind of what my experience and my ideas in judging all the events that I have judged. Now, disclaimer, this is not by any means an official kind of video. All right, I am not speaking as a Bushido judge right now. I'm just speaking as a judge of weiss shorts. So, please do not assume that my word is going to be something that is going to necessarily reflect the company or even necessarily the floor rules. I will be going based off the floor rules for a lot of my facts and stuff like that, but a lot of the other stuff on top of it, yeah, just this is my opinion and my experiences. Okay, so the situation I'm going to demonstrate for you today is actually one that happened to me at the World Championships 2022, and I was the one who made the illegal play. So this is one that I think actually occurs a lot. It's pretty frequent with this kind of card profile. So let's go straight ahead to demonstrating it. So I'm going to start off with my opening hand, and let's just pretend that there's no mulligan happening, so my waiting room is empty. I'm going to draw for turn. I'm going to clock and draw 2 more cards. And then I'm going to play this level 0 Elaine. Now this level 0 Elaine has 2 effects. The first one, they both activate on placement of the card from hand to stage. The first one is when you place from hand to stage, you can reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a Britannia character, you can add it to your hand and then discard any card. The second one is you can discard a Britannia character in order to draw 1 card. So I'm going to use the first effect, reveal the top card of my deck. It's a Britannia character. I'm going to add it to my hand. We're going to go ahead and discard a card. And then I'm going to discard a card, and I'm going to draw a card and freeze. So as you can see, I have made an illegal play. Instead of discarding a Britannia character, I have discarded a climax, and I have drawn a card from the deck to my hand. Now, real quick, I want you guys to, off the top of your head, or check the floor rules real quick in 5 seconds. What infraction does this current play, what's the penalty here? All right, I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's right. This is a game loss. This is a game loss. So you've drawn an extra card, no matter how and what way, shape, or form. The moment the card touches another card in your hand, it is considered to have been drawn. It's gone from a hidden zone to another hidden zone, in which case it is a game loss because your opponent has no way to guarantee that you have drawn the card that you've drawn. They have no idea what you added to your hand. You could have done something really weird or shady. Very easy to cheat with drawing extra cards, though that's why I think the floor rules are just very strict when it comes to this. However, there are situations where drawing an extra card can be rewound. So there's two situations. The first one is if the card can be identified by both players. Now in the situation at Worlds, when I was drawing the card and my opponent caught me, kind of like, at the moment I was like, oh shoot, I definitely messed up, but I was able to really use my experience because I hadn't fully added it to my hand. And so the best thing you do here is you just pause. You stop moving, because if you move, it just makes everything worse. So I stopped moving and I slowly separated my hand and the card that I drew so that they're nowhere near each other. and then just waited for the judge to come. And by doing this and not touching anything, not moving, not fidgeting, it just makes it very clear that I'm communicating to my opponent. I'm not trying to cheat. This was completely an accident. I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to touch anything, right? Slowly separate all the pieces that are in contention, and then we were able to identify the card that was drawn, made it easier to potentially rewind. And the second reason why this situation could be potentially rewound in this specific game state is that it's the first move of the game, right? It's the very start of the game. There's really no other hidden zones besides the deck, and like the waiting room is clear what cards I discarded for this effect, and there's really no way I could get an unfair advantage at this point compared to like just getting an unfair advantage by like just drawing my first 5 cards, right? Like it's all random here. So this does make it easier to potentially rewind, but once again, both players have to agree to the rewind. It can't just be something that one player asks for and the other player, denies. Although if the judge does think that the situation is repairable, right, the judge does have the authority to say, no, actually, I think this situation is rewindable. I'm going to do it in a way that's, fair, and both players will have to accept it. So, huge shout out to my round 1 opponent, Darcy, for agreeing to the rewind and allowing the judge to rewind the situation. Because I do think this is rewindable, even though the default or the general penalty for drawing an extra card is a game loss. Now I'm going to show 3 different types of rewinds here, and all 3 rewinds are going to assume that the card cannot be identified. Obviously, if both players can't identify the card, it's pretty easy. We just put the card back and then just shuffle the deck, right? I think that's like pretty simple to rewind, and anybody can do it. I'm just going to do it based off of like, let's say the card is lost. Let's say like I drew the card and I already did a few hand shuffles before my opponent said, wait a second, you discarded a climax for that. Then, okay, so now the card is completely lost to both players. It's still rewindable. I think this is actually still rewindable. So the first rewind method is, now that the card has been lost, what's going to happen is we're going to rewind the last ability. So the card is in hand. We're going to have the opponent or the judge randomly choose a card from the hand. This card is put back into the deck. The deck is reshuffled. And then the climax is returned back to the hand. So it's as if the second ability was not activated. This is one potential rewind. Now, this rewind is fair to both players because, as you can see, it's very early on in the game. Basically all the cards that I have in my hand were drawn from the deck, right? I didn't search any card. I didn't, do any other effects. These are all drawn, so it doesn't really matter which one I drew and which one I put back because they're all just cards that I naturally added from my hand by drawing and not other effects. So it's completely fair, right, in that sense. However, as many viewers might realize that this is not really an ideal rewind because I'm in a situation that I would not have been in had I played that correctly, right? Like, what if my hand was full of climaxes, and by discarding one of my climaxes and then forcing this rewind, I could potentially shuffle back a climax that was originally in my hand that I didn't actually want to draw back into my deck to get an unfair advantage. So, this is definitely not the ideal rewind, even though all rewinds come with a warning so that you can't abuse it. It's still kind of a little bit unfair that, just in this one instance, I'm able to get a card from my hand back into the deck that's not the card that I drew off of my misplay. Right, but this is the rewind that is outlined in the floor rules, which means that it is, acceptable based on Bushido standards. Obviously, Bushido doesn't specifically say that this is the only rewind method, but this is an approved rewind method, and it is considered to be fair for both players. However, I believe we can do better, so I'm going to demonstrate the second rewind method that I think is better. So the second rewind method says, let's say in this situation, we discard the climax, we drew a card. And let's say in this situation, we determine that the second effect has actually resolved. So the card that we drew is still going to be the card that we're going to draw. But in this case, instead of discarding the climax, we're going to have the player's hand. So the judge is going to look at the player's hand, remove any card that is not a character. In this case, all the cards are characters, so you don't have to remove anything. But let's say if there was like an event or a climax, we would remove it, set it to the side. The player would shuffle their hand, and then the judge or the opponent would choose one of these cards. And this now becomes the new discard for the effect. And then the climax gets returned to hand. And since the card has already been drawn and it's already in the hand, then yeah, we don't have to do anything. Basically, we choose a valid target for the cost rather than rewinding the entire effect. So this is better, right? Because we don't touch the deck at all. the card that has been drawn is already been drawn, the cards in the hand are still in the hand. And this way we can't also discard a climax and like perform something else that would give the player an advantage. However, this is still not ideal, right? Because there is the chance that the card that I drew is the card that ended up being discarded, you know, for the rewind process, which is totally an illegal situation. Like that literally cannot happen, right? So the fact that that could potentially happen is not ideal, right? Also, this actually gives way too much advantage to the opponent, which is kind of awkward, right? Because like, you know, what if that was a card I wanted to play this turn, right? That I wasn't going to discard in the first place, but because I randomly selected the card, you know, to discard, now it's in my waiting room. Or what if the card that is in my waiting room is like actually a card that I want to be there, right? So it's kind of weird here that the advantage given, because it's like the waiting room rather than the deck, it actually does give an advantage to the opponent in some ways and also to the player in some ways. So it's just not entirely fair, right? But it is fair in the sense that it is random, and this is still better than returning the card to the deck, a random card to the deck, and then shuffling, because I think that is definitely way more unfair for the opponent. If you're gonna have to choose between the player making the mistake and the opponent, it's better to prioritize the opponent in terms of like what is more fair to them, because the player who made the mistake, they made the mistake, right? They are suffering the penalty, you know, whether they like it or not. But ideally, you would want to choose something that doesn't benefit either player. All right, so that's the rewind number 2. And then we're gonna show off rewind number 3. So rewind number 3 is actually quite simple. And the rewind number 3 goes, well, you discarded this as the resolution for the first effect, and you discard this as the cost for the second effect. Between these two actions, you as the player did not perform any other actions, right? There was nothing in between them. Therefore, the third rewind is we will just switch the order of the discard for resolution and the discard for cost, and you'll be given a warning, and play may proceed. Now this rewind is very simple. In fact, the players basically don't have to do anything. You basically, as a judge, say, I'm going to rewind the entire situation and declare a legal action that you could have taken as the player. That does not give any player more information or incentive, right? Actually, both cards were revealed by the player to their opponent, right? And the judge is basically saying, this is the new order that has happened, right? And now the game state is completely legal. And the reason why it works in this case is because, once again, there is no action being taken between the discarding of this and discarding of this, right? If you look at the way the text is worded, like this, these two things happen at the exact same time, effectively, or one after each other, in which case they can just be rearranged and nothing, you know, no advantage would have been gained. Now, the difficulty in this rewind, actually, it's really simple. It's actually too simple. I think some players might not be happy with just like how quote-unquote easy it is to fix the situation, but this is definitely the best way, because no cards are like randomly discarded from the hand, no cards are randomly shuffled back to the deck. The deck doesn't even have to be shuffled or touched at all, right? You just have to, as a judge, identify that, like, yeah, now this, if we just order it this way, the game state is completely legal, and the player will be given a warning so that they can't abuse it for future situations, but at least the current game and the current game state is preserved. And yeah, so as you can see, those are 3 different rewind methods for this illegal game state. And once again, all 3 are valid, right? So if a judge does this, any of these 3 rewinds at an official tournament, they're doing their job. They're doing a good thing, right? They're doing something that's fair to both players. However, in my opinion, I think the last one that I showed is definitely the best one, because it touches the least amount of zones. It's the simplest to do, and it also gives neither player any advantage whatsoever besides, you know, the infraction of the warning for the player who made the mistake. But let me know what you guys think. For aspiring judges, just think about kind of like my thought process in demonstrating these rewinds, and think for yourself, like, what makes a rewind fair? How is the best way I can go about fixing a game state like this? And for people who are players, let me know if you think my last rewind was the best rewind or not, or if you have any reason that you thought one of the earlier rewinds were better. You know, let me hear it in the comments below. I love getting more feedback and opinions about these kinds of things. I'm always constantly rethinking my rewind process and really reevaluating like my game knowledge, just so I can be a better judge at handling these situations. So that's it for this time. It's a bit of a unique video, but hopefully I would love to do more judge related videos in the future, because I mean that's kind of my main calling when it comes to this game. So that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.